What is up, you guys? We are back in the Spark Studio with another episode of Investigating Innovation with the I2C. I'm your host, Madison Travis, and on today's episode, we're going to be spotlighting one of our mentors, Axel. We're going to be asking him about his professional career, what kind of advice he's received, and what kind of advice he would pass on to fellow entrepreneurs. Let's roll. Hey, Axel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. We're super excited to have you in the Spark Studio today. Axel is a mentor of ours, so we're going to be kind of picking his brain a little bit about what advice he would give and kind of what his professional career has looked like, I guess. So, I guess introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about your professional life, your specialty, and all that.
Absolutely. So, it's a pleasure to be here to start with. I think, just seeing the building and everything you have, it's a very, very cool place. So I'm excited to be here to start with and excited to have the opportunity to become a mentor and help people here. But when I think about my life and my career, life is an adventure, right? So,
True.
As you probably see from my name and hear my accent, I wasn't born in Kentucky. So I grew up in Sweden, and so that's where I'm from. And after my engineering degree, I got into medical devices as an engineer, and later I joined a startup company called Plasma Circle, and that was a small company, about 5 people in Sweden at the time. But I was part of that company for about 10 years and grew to 100 people. And through that journey, I became a manager and other things, but also ended up having manufacturing in several countries. And we built a manufacturing plant in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's how I ended up in the U.S. in 2011.
Oh, okay. I would say that's a huge change from 5 to 100 people, too.
Yeah. So when we talk about entrepreneurs and people that you have in your community and your around the incubator here, it's like, I've been part of that, going through that and seeing the growth pains and things, that's happened. So that's, truly a journey for me personally and professionally to do that.
Oh, for sure. And there's such a change in how business is conducted whenever you have 5 people who are running the show and then you have 100 people who are there to help. I mean, there's such a drastic difference, and the growth is good, but sometimes it can be a little overwhelming and hard to navigate too. So
kind of continuing on that trail, my life's being an adventure. So when I came to the U.S., as I said, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a few years, and that's where I met my wife. She's American. She's born and raised in Atlanta, and she was doing her PhD at Vanderbilt. So after getting tired of driving back and forth between Nashville and Atlanta, I looked for an opportunity in Nashville, and I also ended up at Vanderbilt, but at the tech transfer office, helping researchers that were involved in medical device and other life science technologies to help them, with my background experience, going through that journey to kind of help them on the pathway forward, whatever that meant for the company. So.
So as a mentor, I know you're kind of just joining the team and getting involved with us here at the I2C. What is your specialty? What is your specific area that you help entrepreneurs with?
I would say primarily it is medical devices. So, I've been with several startups now, to where I'm at today, following some other things after Vanderbilt. But, medical devices is my specialty, specialty, period. But to that end too, sometimes what I do say my specialty is my breadth combined with depth. So if you kind of think about any stage from having an idea for a medical device to bring that into commercial distribution, all the different steps that you need to go through, in some shape or form, I've been involved in that hands-on. So I have practical experience from all the stages, from prototyping to develop the product, get into manufacturing, test it in different ways, get through the FDA, reimbursement and the whole 9 yards. So medical device as a general area, but pretty much anything within medical devices.
Okay, awesome. That is a very it's niche, but also has a lot of aspects to it. So there's a wide range of people you can help while also having a very niche, little market to work with. But that's super awesome. That's cool. Something that I do not know a lot about. That is one thing about being here. I've learned a lot about different areas that I would have never had the chance to really learn about unless I went out of my way to research these things, because there's just so many different facets with the startup companies here and all the things that they're doing. So how long have you been in this industry again?
So about 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
about 20 years. But the only thing I want to mention with that, though, that
Yeah.
while medical devices is my area of that I've specialized in, a lot of the things that you would do to bring some sort of technology to the market, all different phases, is sort of like technology agnostic, if you will. That even though, meaning that whether it's a consumer product or a service, a lot of the things that you go through as a startup company and the things that you need to consider to be successful is sort of the same, no matter if it's a medical device or
Right.
something else. So I think while I'm sort of my expertise lays within the medical device field, I think, I've been mentoring companies that are not specifically medical devices too.
Okay.
So
And, with this being a tech startup incubator, I mean, like you mentioned, if those are all kind of going through the same steps, obviously you can be of help in some way. And honestly, I think any of our mentors can help almost any of our entrepreneurs here, even if you're not specifically necessarily addressed in that area of expertise. I think all of you guys have something to show for and something to help all of them with. So kind of going off that, going off the mentoring subject, what kind of advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Like if you could sit down and kind of write your own book about, the advice, I'm sure it would be forever long, but, kind of what are those few things that stick out whenever you're kind of trying to help entrepreneurs? What are those few pieces of advice?
to pick one to start with that I think stick out, which is sort of an area that I really like myself, is the side of planning. I don't think I can overemphasize the importance of sort of planning, and I don't mean so much that you need to spend all your time in building the most detailed plan that the world has ever seen. It's more like to actually just have a plan, because I see that a lot with early stage companies that they know that they need to do a lot of things to get this product or service to the market, and they have a general idea of where it needs to go, but it's often I see that hasn't really been anything put on paper and something that's consolidated. The reason why that's important is that on at least on a high level, have some sort of understanding where you want to go at least the next year. It's very important for the entire team to be aligned of what needs to happen, and that will help you in several ways in communication with external stakeholders, for instance, like mentors, but also investors and others. That if you do have a plan to some level that you're all united around and you have discussed why you want to do certain things, you will have a better position to explain that to others, to get better help, but also get funding if you seek external funding for that. So,
Right.
so that's very important, I think, to just have some sort of a plan and get together around that as a team. And of course, things change all the time, especially in a startup. But at least you have a starting point, and you can then look at where you were heading, and if an issue come up or an opportunity come up, you can decide if you need to pivot or if you can continue where you were planning to go.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned the team aspect is really important too, because you have to be united around something. Because I think, I know Valentina Escaro, she's also a mentor. She was on one of my recent episodes, and she was talking about, how her and a partner had different visions. And, it wasn't a bad thing, but that caused, kind of parting of ways and just directions to completely change. And so I think that's a really key part of the planning. It's not just you having an idea of where you're going, but also everyone, kind of agreeing upon that specific direction. I have mentioned this kind of before on here, but I haven't really thought about a lot of the entrepreneur aspects, even though I've been working here at the Startup Hub for over a year now. I hadn't really thought about a lot of these, but I had an entrepreneurship class that really made me think about the key aspects that you're really trying to look for whenever you're even, thinking up an idea, before you even get anything on paper or anything.
And it's important for companies of all stages too. I mean, but I think it's when you grow and get to further down the road, I guess more people are brought on board that may have that expertise to kind of help with building those type of plans. So that's why I think it's important to kind of stress that, because the thing is that too, you all have to run in the same direction at the end of the day, and
For sure.
you need to be super focused, and having a plan helps you prioritize also what you need to do next, because there's
Right.
so many things that you can work on as a startup company entrepreneur. So you kind of need to at least have some sort of a list and a plan for, let's attack this first, and then we go to that. Because at the end of the day, you have very limited funding. You may have got a
Right.
grant, you may have friends and family pitch in, maybe you have some angel seed funding, but when that money is out, it's over, right? So
Right.
you kind of have to do the best you can with the people and the money that you have to get you to the next milestone, which kind of will allow you as a company to raise more money.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to have that plan. You can forecast and kind of think about, how different, if you had a certain direction, how that's going to impact where you're going to be next.
Yeah, and entrepreneurs, you kind of touched on this. Entrepreneurs are always wanting to take on every project they can, especially right there at the beginning. They're eager to get involved. So even if that's not necessarily in their scope of work or like what they've planned to do, they want to take it on and hopefully build a client relationship and, get the money, get the sales, get some sort of growth going. And so sometimes it can be damaging and something that is not beneficial. So, going back to the original thing you said, having a plan and seeing if that opportunity aligns with that or if you need to pivot and change things is super important, you know? That's why mentors are around like you guys to help them stay in that direction. With your professional career and, all the years of experience you've had, I'm sure you've had a few mentors and, authority figures along the way. What is some of the best advice that you've received in your professional career?
Yeah, I've got a few ones that are pretty good, but I think the one that may be worth bringing up today, which also actually ties back to what we just talked about, is kind of to keep the focus. And you kind of said it right now yourself, but it's easy to have a technology that can do many different things, and you want to do all of them, right? So, which may make sense eventually,
Right.
but you need to kind of understand, what pathways you have and keep that focus. Kind of goes back to planning, but for instance, if you do have a technology, a product or service that can generate revenue in many different ways, that you lay out the different ways that can happen, and you look at which one makes most sense for you as a company, whether it's maybe it's not the coolest, the one that's going to give you $100 million,
Right.
but it may get you into the market faster to get you to revenue.
Yeah.
And if you're in revenue, you have an easier access to external capital. So it's more kind of getting to that focus, because I've been in that situation several times myself in my career, where you do have something that's really cool and you can do many different things and you want to do all of them. And then first off, you run out of bandwidth because you can't do everything. And then also when you get to the point where you pitch to investors, they are super sensitive to that. They want you to really show focus, because they're going to give you money to bring something to the market to make them even more money. So for that, they need to see that your team is aligned, you have a plan, and then you're focused. So
Right.
keeping the focus and just putting other things on the back burner, even though they may also be super cool and interesting and going to make you a lot of money, you just need to pick one and go with that.
So this is kind of going off that. This is kind of a random question, I guess. But, if you go to an investor and you're showing them the projects that you've worked on and they're really scattered, like they're kind of, you have a lot of experience and you've worked on a lot of different things, but they're kind of all over the place. Would you say that is going to kind of diminish your, not reputation, but kind of like stain your image a little bit in the eye of the investor? Or kind of what would you think the investor would think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's immediately a red flag.
Okay.
It may stop right there and then, and they say
Yeah.
it's not going to move forward unless you really have something that's like, groundbreaking and like super hot.
Right.
And they may just have oversight with that, which is very unique.
Yeah.
And also talking about that, the thing with investors, they see the deal flow they have is like ridiculous. They can get maybe 20 pitch decks a day of new possibilities to invest in. So, so for them, it's easier to say no than it is to say yes.
Sure.
So if you show up and you don't have your ducks in a row and you're scattered and you want to change everything in the world, you're not going to get an investment.
Right. Well, I really enjoy getting to talk about the focus and like the importance of really planning and being niche about what you're trying to do, honestly, because, if you're trying to do everything, then that means everyone else can probably do it too. So, thank you so much for all of your insight and your advice. I'm sure that people will really get to enjoy hearing your word about this. And
Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for coming on. And that is all for today's episode, you guys. I hope that hearing more about Axel's experience and his advice made you realize how important it is to have a plan and stay focused when you're starting your own company. Be on the lookout for who I'm going to interview next. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on all of our socials at UAHI2C on Instagram and UAH Invention to Innovation Center on Facebook. Onward and upward.